Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Travis Jones, the board game designer behind Stonemaier Games' latest title, Pendulum, which launches this month. Travis, welcome to the Binge. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. I really do appreciate your time. This is kind of a different situation than we usually get. So we've had some Kickstarters on here. We've had different developers that have done games that have already gone to market. This is the first time that we've had someone that's got a game being published by Stonemaier Games, and I'm pretty excited. This is a true honor to have you on here. Certainly a great publisher to be part of. So welcome definitely to the Binge. So let's just kick off very quickly. Can you explain to everybody what Pendulum is?
Yeah, sure. So Pendulum, the new game coming out from Stonemaier Games, as you mentioned. It's hopefully a kind of a different and new experience for folks that play it. A lot of different ways you could describe it. There's simultaneous play, and there is the heart of it is kind of worker placement games. You have workers that you're putting on the board on different action spaces to take actions. And there's definitely some engine building. You get more powerful as you go throughout the game, and you sort of build up your production ability and everything. But what's really different about the game is there are no turns, because most of the game is actually played in real time, which by itself is not necessarily, the most new idea. There's plenty of games out there that have a sand timer or something in them.
Sure.
But Pendulum is a little bit different because unlike other games, there's no timer that's on you as a player. The timers are these shared communal timers that kind of act as these gating mechanisms that sort of measure when you can take an action in a certain area. And there's different areas with different lengths of timers. So as a player, you're able to kind of adjust the time pressure on your own game by taking longer actions or shorter actions. And then you're also trading off with the different kinds of actions that you'll get. If you take an action that takes more time, you usually get more in return for it, but you'll lock up a worker for longer. So anyway, so it all adds up to this interesting kind of different experience where players are really constantly engaged with the game. But again, you don't necessarily have some of the pressure and some of the aspects that some people don't like about real-time games. There's no buzzer that's about to buzz on you. There's no sand timer you have to watch, and as soon as the sand runs out, oh, now I have to do X, Y, and Z. Timers just shared throughout the players in a communal way. So it creates this very different experience, and that's been really satisfying, the feedback that we've got from players from when I was playtesting at first to the more official waves of playtesting we did with Stonemaier Games. So we got a lot of feedback of people saying this is really a different, unique experience, and it's kind of hard to describe how it feels to play the game, which is kind of great because we want to offer people something new. And so we also had a lot of people that would say, I don't like real-time games, but I like this game, which was also great to hear that we really found a way to make something that is very different and kind of niche in some ways, and make it sort of more accessible to more players to have fun with it. So that's
I guess that's when you talk to people about saying it's simultaneous play, the first thing people are probably thinking of, oh, this is going to be chaotic, right? This is just going to it's going to be stressful. It's going to be anxiety. If I'm all thumbs, I can't move fast enough. Am I going to be? But it's not like that. You're kind of doing your thing while other people are doing their thing. And that timer action, is it fair to say that kind of becomes the way I saw it when I was, watching these playthroughs, is it kind of blocks off areas from resource development, but then once the timer's up, it opens up, and then you have the opportunity to block off potentially other areas of resource development. Is that how that kind of works?
Yeah, that's kind of a way to describe it. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of blocking off different areas. It's not really, it doesn't create a race or something where it's like, once the timer flips, now I got to do as much of this as fast as I can. And that's the real different experience. In other real-time games, you'll feel like you're trying to go as fast, and if you can go faster than other players, you'll have an advantage. Don't get me wrong, there's still time pressure in the game. So there's a point at which, if you take more than 2 minutes to make a decision, yes, you'll fall behind other players. Yeah. But the shortest timer in the game is 45 seconds. So if I make my decision in 5 seconds and you make yours in 40 seconds, there's no difference in the result of what happens. So you get this kind of more time to breathe. Then again, there's different length timers. There's 2 minute and 3 minute timers where you have your workers there. You have even more time to think through. So we've gotten good, consistent feedback that while it may look kind of strange and chaotic if you walk by it on a table at GameCon, once people can go to GameCons again.
Yeah.
It'll probably look weird, different, and also probably look kind of frantic because you see all these players moving around and you have to think, well, how can anyone know what everyone's doing? But the thing is, you're playing your game, and there are limited points of interaction with other players. So you definitely feel you're playing with other players. They're blocking spaces, they're competing with you in votes for a council phase. So you get the interaction, but at the same time, the way the game looks is very different from how it feels because you're only managing your game, and within your game, you'll have lots of moments to think.
And part of that perceived chaos might be the fact that this is just loaded with components. Like I don't even know what the count is, but how many components does this game have in it? Like it is robust.
I don't remember off the top of my head either. That if you go to the Stonemaier Games website, though, there's a teaser trailer for the game.
I saw that.
I remember mentions the number of components. I think it's over 250.
Oh, well, you got 250 tokens. There's one game board. There's 3 sand timers. You got these double-sided character mats. You got 56 province cards, 31 council reward cards, rule book, quick reference guide, like just tons and tons of stuff, which can be intimidating, I guess, if somebody's kind of looking really closely or walking by it and looking at it quickly. But what I really thought was interesting in some of these playthroughs I saw was that there's the ability to flip boards over, so that if there's like an advanced or like an expert mode versus a non-expert mode, so if someone wants to kind of ease their way in, they can do that. Likewise, the timer component, can you explain a little bit how that works? Because I know there's a real-time timer, and then there's kind of like almost like a mocked systematic kind of counter or something like that, right?
Yep. Yeah, so there's an untimed way to play, and there's basic and advanced characters. And yeah, to your point about the components, that's also partially driven by the different characters. So there's so many components partially because you have all these different characters that you can choose to play in the game. They each have their own set of cards. Each player has their own set of resources. So that ups the component count. But actually, it's actually a decently quick game to set up and take down because you won't be using all the characters in every game.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see that it was 60 to 90 minutes. Was the playtime, which is fairly reasonable. That's, if you're doing a game night, you can play that plus another game in that game night easily. I was actually surprised, but it's one of these things where there's so much, I guess, stuff, but I'd characterize that as value that you're bringing to your people that are buying the game. And I mean, the price is very reasonable for what you're getting. But at the same time, it's not too complicated that, somebody that wants to get in and give it a try can play it. Can you talk a little bit about these characters? Like there's the asymmetrical gameplay, and it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about what that means for some of our listeners out there and how that's employed in your game.
Yeah, sure. There's basically 5 different characters in the game that you can choose to play. The game goes up to 5 players, so you could have all the characters in the game at one time. But then each character has basically a basic side and an advanced side. But it's not, the basic side is kind of simpler to play in ways, but it doesn't make the game watered down necessarily. Really, the basic characters, we kind of bubbled up what the most fun aspects of a character to play are, and then we kind of took those and standardized them across. So everyone's basic characters are more similar. There's still differences. You have 4 different victory tracks in the game: power, prestige, popularity, and then a legendary achievement that all players need to get. So the characters kind of tie in with their backstory of, you have a warrior general character, it's Minotaur, who needs a lot more power victory points to win. And then you have the scheming, aristocrat noble who needs more prestige to win the game. So the different victory link tracks sort of make the characters feel different in how you play the game and their story. And then when you flip to the advanced side, that's when you get even more interesting kind of game-breaking powers. They call them advanced because as you're learning the game, especially if you're playing in real time, we want to make sure the rules are simple, intuitive, and clear. So the advanced characters start to break the rules. So it's better if you play the game at least once or twice, so that those don't throw you for a loop. But they offer a lot more kind of interesting dynamic gameplay with the advanced characters. So and that's got it. Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say that would extend the gameplay, like replayability, I would say too, right? So, getting, especially if you have a group that plays all the time, but maybe somebody new joins, you can say, okay, let's play kind of the standard rules, which is still very robust. But then if you have people that have played it quite a number of times, then okay, now let's kind of up the game a bit. Let's go more to the advanced rules. That's more spice to
absolutely.
this party.
Yeah, that was something we had to put a lot of thought into. And as you mentioned before, so there's, there's the real-time game, which is sort of how it was developed, but we realized a lot of people could learn it easier if you could play it without the real-time pressure. So there is this whole untimed mode that sort of walks you through the order that the timers would flip, but you don't actually have to worry about the time. You can take as much time on your turn to do what you want.
Yeah.
And so that makes it a lot easier to give a space for new players to learn the game without the time pressure. But we've also found that some people actually just enjoy playing the game that way. We really tried to make sure it was a rich and complex game, which isn't always the case with real-time games. If you played other, you may find if you take the timers away and just walk through it turn by turn, you'd find it like a really simple, easy game.
Yeah.
But this game is more complex. It offers a different experience. So even if you play the whole game without the timers, we have a lot of people that enjoy playing it that way, and you still get a fulfilling experience. So.
Now, how did you come up with the idea of this game? So this is and what I was shocked at is this your first published game, right? So, I mean, you're not putting your toe in the water. You went with, the big kid on the block in terms of, on the indie side anyways. I would say Stonemaier is probably the publisher you want to be with, right?
Yeah.
And so how did you develop this game? So where did the game itself start? How long ago did you start this game? And then how did it kind of evolve into its current kind of format?
Yeah, no, I was thrilled to get to work with Stonemaier. So interestingly, so how I got to work on this game is actually how I got into game design. Period. This is the first game that I started working on and designing. Although I've designed other games since then, and the first version of this game was awful. I mean, it was my first thing that I designed, so it looked very different from how it is now. And then I had to go work on other games and sort of get my brain off it and come back to it and take lessons learned to completely revamp a lot of what was in this game. So while it was the first one that I worked on, yeah, it was a long journey. And so I started working on it 5.5 years ago, I think, maybe close to 6.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah, it was a long journey, but the original inspiration, I remember there was this long day of gaming on like a Saturday afternoon into the night that I played with some friends.
Yeah.
We played these like really crunchy, heavy strategy games, which I love. And we're all taking like forever on our turn because many of us can be prone to AP, as it's called, or analysis paralysis, which take forever to decide what you do on your turn, which is enjoyable when you're doing it. But when you're waiting on other people to take their turn, it can be very frustrating. But not that I judge people to do it, because I totally do it. My friends, I have a bad reputation amongst our gaming circles as being someone who can take forever on their turn. So it's not that I'm opposed to having a game where you think for a really long time. And the idea behind Pendulum, it sort of came to me the next day. I think after that day of long gaming, I went to bed that night thinking, was there a way you could get that awesome engaging experience, but not have to wait on someone else to take their turn? And that was sort of what was tumbling in the back of my mind. I woke up the next morning with all these ideas of what if you had timers, but it wasn't a timer on you, so you didn't feel as much pressure. It was more these communal timers with different areas. You could trade off different kinds of time. So that heart of the game was actually there right from the get-go. And I'd never really thought about seriously pursuing designing a game. It was when I had this idea and I thought, oh, that would be something really different and new and unique for the board game hobby. And that was what made me want to pursue it. If I wasn't going to do something really new and different, I don't think I quite had as much gusto to try to do it as much as I'd sit around and think of what would I do to make a new game where you trade goods in the Mediterranean? Because I love the new game that comes out and does that, but it doesn't feel like a new kind of experience. So this is what really inspired me and got me going was, if I can make this work, I think it would be something different for board gamers out there and a really cool new experience. And so that was what got me going on it. And like I said, it took a long time to get there, but
and then when you started off, so you had this kind of inspiration as you're going to bed that night. What was the first step? Pen and paper? Did you start rummaging through old games and harvesting pieces? How did you kind of start your initial iteration?
You got it. So I because it was the first game I was designing, I was learning everything on the fly. So I started with index cards, pencil and paper, so I didn't know what else to do. And just like you said, scrounging bits from other games. And so over the next few months, I started to figure out, okay, I can put this on a computer somewhere and print it out. So because people don't have to read my horrible handwriting, which is not great. And then finally found some websites we could order little bits so I didn't have to pillage from other games. And then it was a constant process along with designing the game to just learn how to design in general. So there is this whole learning curve that I went through, like I said, over 5 or 6 years of how to prototype and how to put something together that would work at the table. that wasn't overproduced for what you were trying to get done to just test it out. So.
And how did that learning start? So how did you do that? So you had this learning curve. Was there resources you tapped into? Was it reading? Like what was the process you went through as you started the journey?
There's so much great stuff out there on the internet. I'd listen to podcasts or like video podcasts or reviews of people, not reviews, video podcasts of people with advice and tips and stuff like that. I also did just a lot of just reading online. You can find a lot of places and forums or elsewhere where people have done blogs or articles to say, here's your first steps as designers you should think about that you should do. And then a lot of it was just trial by fire of doing a prototype, getting people to the table and seeing what went wrong. So there was sadly many lessons that I would read on the internet after the fact. It says, make sure you practice or teach something before you bring people. And I was like, oh, yes, I just learned that the hard way. I wish I'd read this beforehand. So definitely recommend people avail themselves of all the resources that are out there.
And then how did you get this to Stonemaier? Like, how did that connection happen? Was it part of a contest or something, or how did you get introduced to the company? And then how did they choose you to kind of come in as their next title?
Yeah, so I was always interested in Stonemaier because, like you said, they do great work, production quality, game quality. I love their games.
They've done a couple small games, I guess, Like Scythe, Wingspan, Tapestry.
Yes, exactly. And at the time, I was really excited for them because I felt like Jamie at Stonemaier was great at taking something. I think they had a good track record of taking something that you don't think is going to be, as successful or you don't think that you would like, and making it appeal to more people. Which is really like what I mentioned at the top, what I was trying to do with Pendulum, to take a concept like real time that's usually not as popular and make it more accessible and approachable. And I feel like you really did that with Wingspan, with, people beforehand would have thought, oh, a game about bird watching is not going to be a hit. And then also Scythe was a big one. I remember like the first time at a GameCon when I saw Scythe laid out, I was like, oh, look at this war game with mechs and minis, Ameritrash battle game. And then I sat down and played it and I was like, wait, this is like a engine building, carefully balanced strategy game. And so it took something that some people don't like and made it more approachable to a whole new segment of gamers. So that really spoke to me of wow, Stonemaier would be great for this. But anyway, so it wasn't a contest. He has an event called Design Day, where it's just an event for people to come bring prototypes and play each other's, which is not really supposed to be something where you pitch him. As he mentioned, he just wants to enjoy the day, walk around and chat with folks and give people a space to play. But I was hopeful, maybe he was interested, he'd take a look at the game. So I emailed him beforehand and reached out and said, hey, I've got this game. I actually had a friend of mine who sort of had worked with them before and asked her to reach out. And she told him a little about the game. And his basic response was, that's nice, but no, I'm not interested in a real-time game. That's not, that's a very niche area and it's not something that I like. So no thanks. But here's the web form if Travis really wants to submit it. So that was interesting. That was his first reaction, which is a lot of the reaction I've gotten with the game. I play it out and people are like, no, I don't enjoy real-time. But just like I said, with a lot of the feedback of people who played it, went to Design Day, played it there. He actually has a system where people rate the games they play. And he collects all the feedback to play back the scores of the game. Oh. So it rated incredibly high. It was like the highest rated game of all the design days that he had held. Which was fantastic. I was ecstatic to see that response. So it was really that response that made him take a second look and say, okay, wait a second. I didn't think I'd be interested in this game at all, but I guess maybe I should take a look. So I got him a copy and then he played with some friends. And so then after he played it, he said, no, I get it. While I didn't think I would like this game, this is really cool, and I want to pursue this. So then just went from there.
How did so it's Robert, is it Leask? Is that how we pronounce his name, the artist?
Yep.
Now, did you bring Robert in? Like, was that part of the original pitch? So you had the artwork done before you pitched it to Stonemaier, or did Stonemaier take it and say, okay, let's put our artist on this now? And
yeah, no, Stonemaier did the art. I didn't have any art to bring to the table. Art is not my forte. So I had some thoughts on what it might look like, but I trusted Jamie with that. He has such a great track record.
Oh, of course. So and this is important for other developers out there. So when they're showing their prototype, right? It's not always going to be pretty, but you try to pretty it up as much as you can. So was it called Pendulum, your first version, or was it called something else?
It was not. It was originally called Heir to the Empire. Okay. And it actually had a different theme, interestingly. So speaking of like how to approach developers. So I originally came up with this game and I thought, it just sort of in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I just kind of want to make this fantasy setting, this empire fantasy setting. always knew I wanted to be this sort of like empire setting because, like I said, the real time is trying to do something different. And so I didn't want it to be a traditional real-time theme where you're doing something frantically, you know, and you're like, I Love Lucy at the Pie Factory, like trying to throw things in quickly. Like it was always supposed to be different, a feel. So I wanted the theme to speak to that. So I thought this long empire setting where you're planning over months and years. So I really thought fantasy. And then when I really thought about pitching it, I thought, nah, no developers are going to want to, you know, publish my kooky fantasy world. Let's do something board game companies like. So I switched the whole thing over to this ancient Rome theme. And that's how I brought it to Stonemaier, actually. I pitched it, and he got on board with that. And then, like, one of his first emails to me, he said, what do you think about the theme? I was thinking of, like, a fantasy setting. I was like, well, that's great. That's what I actually always wanted to do. I only changed it because I thought you would like it that way. So I was surprised that he actually took that tack. So that was great to then pivot back to what it originally was, to go with the theme. And yeah, so it wasn't we came up with a name later together. It was really just called Heir to the Empire, which is kind of this generic name for pursuing the Empire throne or whatever. But yeah, there wasn't, like I said, so there wasn't much of any art, and the art, what little art that I had was like clip art or things I gotten off the internet that wasn't even fitting the final theme. So absolutely, the art was something he handled, which I was glad to hand over to him because, you know, he's got such a great track record.
And I think that's a good lesson for other, you know, game designers out there, is that sometimes people get caught up in, oh, I got to get the best artwork, you know, on this prototype, and you don't. You can use, as you said, clip art. You go to like Shutterstock or one of these stock photography sites. Who cares if you leave the watermarks on? It's just something you're using to play with your friends and, you know, give people an idea. I think it's important to use something, right? So some people can get beyond just mechanics and start seeing, you know, get a feel for the story and the theme. But it doesn't have to be fully locked down. I mean, you can change it right up until you're ready to launch, whether it be through a Kickstarter campaign or direct through a publisher like Stonemaier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
when
pretty.
You're still, I was say, and when you're still designing the game, taking the art too far, I think is actually an impediment. Because if you like, oh, I literally spent money or I spent hours doing this piece of art in the middle of the board, and then you're still designing the game, and then someone says, well, it would be way better if this track was in the middle of the board. And then you think, oh, but I paid for that art and I don't want to cover it up. So now the fact that you did so much work on the art is impeding the design work that you're trying to do. So yeah, you don't want to take it too far down that path when it's not about to be published.
And you may be less open to change it too, right? And that's one of the things that, you know, when you sign on with a publisher, that's one of the things you sign away, right? Is that, okay, they're going to take your game. Now they have the right to bring in their art team, bring in their story developers. If there's certain things in the mechanics that aren't quite working, that they have the, you know, the rights to be able to adjust those. Was there any mechanics or was there any parts of the game that was adjusted after Stonemaier took over where they said, yeah, we love it, but just this one little thing we want to kind of put a little more pepper on the steak?
He had some great insights of things that we changed after signing it. One of the most core ones was sort of this timing with how you took actions with the timers. For the whole life of the game, I'd always been having it where you had to wait till the timer was done and you flipped it off and you picked up your worker and then you got to take the action as you picked it up. But players were always deciding in that exact moment also what they were going to do next with the worker. So it was like these two thought trains colliding into each other, which was not as satisfying. So Jamie was the first to ask, well, why don't they just take the action while the worker's sitting there with the timer? And I was like, oh, but you know, they need to spend the time. And I had some of the pushback that you do just because it's your baby. And then like, once I really thought about it, I was like, this makes so much more sense. And when I play tested, I was like, this is such a smoother experience. Like I thought it was pretty good as is, but it definitely improved it even more. So yeah, there's a couple other things that he sort of prodded in question on, that things that we changed with how the game worked, which I mean, while I had some attachments, I also was looking forward to that, because I think as any designer, you should know that a second set of eyes, especially a set of eyes that's a successful developer who knows what they're doing, is only going to add value to your game. And while you know you have to let some things go that you may not want on first inclination, I'm so happy with how the game turned out, because I feel like all those changes just made it better. So I was very happy to have that.
Well, certainly there seems to be a lot of interest and excitement around bubbling, waiting for people to get this game. So this comes out in it says August, which we're in August. There's the pre-orders, which I can see on the Stonemaier website, where people can go. And if you go to StonemeierGames.com, you can do your pre-order. I believe it's $45 US, which is very reasonable, because when you see all the stuff you get in this box, it might even be underpriced. I don't know. I was actually surprised that it was only $45.
Maybe so. It's a yeah, and it's like a sale price for the early pre-orders. The price will go up.
So the price will go up. Well, there you go. That's why I was surprised. So when does the price go back up? Is it September? When's the pre-ordering stop?
Oh, I'm not completely certain. I don't want to speak out of turn there. So I'd say reach out to Jamie or Stonemaier Games if you want to know when the price is going to change. I don't know if he's officially announced when it will, but it's definitely on sale for this early part of the pre-order. And then I think the MSRP is $60, so it's a decent discount right now.
Oh yeah,
for early orders.
And then when is it ship right away? Like, is it ready to ship out if you do your pre-order, or when does it actually ship?
It's close, but my understanding is the boat is still like coming into harbor. So pre-orders are happening right now, but they can't literally ship it right now. But I think it will still ship within the next week or two. So I think people who pre-order it will most likely. Because again, I don't want to speak out of turn and make guarantees that I can't make promises I can't guarantee.
Yeah. I'm gonna hold you to
those logistics, but I believe most people are going to get them in August, like mid to late August, if you pre-order.
Yeah, certainly COVID has slowed the boats down. There's no doubt about that at all. And I've talked to a lot of publishers and game designers who are in the middle of their campaigns or have finished their campaigns. I had a campaign that just recently closed, and although we had timelines that we thought we're gonna beat these timelines, we're actually we end up coming like right in on the nose based on just the COVID delays. So you've done other games. Where do you go from here? Like, what are some of the things you're working on? Are you spending the next little while helping promote this game? Do you have some other other cookies in the oven, so to speak, that you're working on, or what's going on?
Yeah, so I have a day job that I still enjoy and don't want to give up. So I don't quite have time to help with the launch of this and then be also designing or publishing another game right now. I have lots of other designs that I've been working on and that I'm still tinkering with right now. But I'm trying to make sure I can focus on this rollout and the launch and everything for Pendulum. But then I'm definitely interested in pursuing those designs in the future. I have nothing official to report right now. But definitely interested in continuing to pursue that. And they're kind of in a similar space. So like I said, it was this different take on real time that got me into game design.
Yep.
And as I've continued on, I don't know, my brain is still fascinated with that. So I have this little obsession to keep tinkering with that. So the other designs that I'm working on are other ways to try to get really creative with how you use real time in a game and kind of change the feel and flow of it to create this kind of different engaging experience. So hopefully Pendulum, hopefully people like Pendulum. It's received well, and then there's people that want to explore the space and have some fun with it, and then I hopefully will pursue some other designs that can maybe continue to scratch that itch for those that want it scratched.
Well, awesome. Well, I wish you all the best with this game. Certainly, I'll be spreading the word because I was impressed from what I've seen. And good luck. You certainly got for the first one out the gate. Gosh, it comes with a lot of instant credibility. So congratulations once again.
All right. I appreciate it, James. Thanks so much.
Thanks again for coming on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. Ciao.
Take care.